How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Hello and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. The phone number 877-973-7425. Glad to have you with me. Delighted. Merry Christmas to you. One housekeeping note for you. I'll be gone on Monday, but I'll be back for Christmas Eve. I don't like having guest hosts on Christmas Eve. I do it myself. So I'll be back. But otherwise, after the show today, I am got to take first everybody to the doctor and then leave them and take a evening flight to Las Vegas with some friends to go hit golf balls. It's my family's Christmas present to me. I have traveled since the middle of the year. I have traveled on planes on Delta 30,000 miles in less than 6 months. I have driven my brand new car, which I got with 4 miles on it, over 15,700 miles since July. I've traveled a lot. I haven't taken a lot of vacation this year. I overcorrected the other year because my daughter was graduating from high school and I felt guilty. And since I've been hesitant on vacations, but I'm going to take some time off to go hit golf balls. Now, I got to tell you this story, and I've told this story before, but there's a larger point here. A much larger point. Let me tell you, and some of you have heard the story, about the very first time I represented an indigent criminal defendant. That is, a poor person who was accused of a crime and couldn't afford a lawyer. When I started out as a lawyer in the year of our Lord 2000, really 2001, I was required in my county to do this representation. They later decided it was a violation of the 13th Amendment, ironically, but they started an indigent criminal defense program. But for the first number of years I was there, if you were a lawyer in my county in Middle Georgia, you were required for 5 years to represent indigent criminal defendants. Some people kept on. It was a way to pay the bills. You did get paid a little bit. My rate as a new lawyer, I think, was like $150 an hour, and I was being paid like $50 an hour, something like that. Anyway, so I am assigned this criminal who the police have pulled over, and they have found crack cocaine under the driver's seat. So off I go to jail to talk to him. Smelly, antiseptic-smelling, odd, creepy place. Get in a room by myself with this lawyer, with this guy. I'm his lawyer. I introduce myself. He's not saying much. I said, here's what the police are saying. Do you agree that they found drugs under your driver's seat? Uh-huh. How did it get there? The man put it there. Which man? The man. Which man? The man. Who did the man look like? You. Me. Yes, you. And then he looked me in the eyes angrily. He crossed his arms, and he would not talk to me. So we got to go to court for arraignment, set a date for trial, pre-trial hearing, all that, and go in to the calendar call, and my client is there with me. And Judge Martha Christian, who is a mean, fiery judge, I was scared of her, but she was wonderful. She was a wonderful, wonderful person and judge. She passed away just a couple of years ago. I adored her, even though I was scared of her. My case comes up, and I stand up. And I say, Your Honor, I'd like to request a psychological evaluation for my client. And she calls me up to the bench with the assistant district attorney, slides her glasses down to the end of her nose. She cocks her head forward, looks at me kind of with her eyes up at me. She says, why do you want a psychological evaluation for your client? I said, Your Honor, my client admits that the crack cocaine was found under the driver's seat of his car, but he says a man put it there. And when I keep asking him who this man was, he says, the man looks like me. He's clearly crazy. And she shoos me away and she looks up. She says, "Sir, stand up." The man stands up. She says, "Do you mean a man or the man planted crack cocaine under your driver's seat?" He says, "The man, the man." She looks at me. She says, "Mr. Erickson, your client is not crazy. He's a racist. He thinks the white man planted the crack cocaine under his seat." We wound up pleading guilty. He went to prison for a couple of years, got out, and within weeks of getting out, interestingly enough, he was shot and killed in a gang shooting. Now, this was an eye-opening thing to me. Country bumpkin, grew up overseas, didn't experience this sort of stuff in life, but this guy had concocted a conspiracy in his head to abdicate responsibility for his own actions. And we see this on the left with intersectionality. I'm the victim because I'm in a class, a historically oppressed class. And, we're seeing this on the right now with a bunch of white people, like the story I read you the other day about the discrimination against white guys in Hollywood. And a buddy of mine pointed out it's probably a real story, but it's only not a significant number of people. And this happens in corporations. It is increasingly happening. It is causing people on the right to take victim status. Ben Shapiro, God bless him. He's a great guy. Have a lot of funny Ben Shapiro stories from our interactions together. He was at the TPUSA AmFest yesterday, going after Candace Owens and her ilk. And part of his point is that they're concocting conspiracy theories for people to abdicate responsibility. And also they're doing this to just make you dumber. I want you to listen to some of what he said.
When Steve Bannon, for example, accuses his foreign policy opponents of loyalty to a foreign country, he's not actually making an argument based in evidence. He's simply maligning people that he disagrees with, which is indeed par for the course from a man who was once a PR flack for Jeffrey Epstein. Check the record. Our duty to provide you evidence means we actually have to do much more than just ask questions. Just asking questions is something my 5-year-old does, and it's really cute when it comes from my 5-year-old. But when grown men and women spend their days just asking questions without, seeking answers, they are lying to you. In fact, they're doing something even worse. They are seeding distrust in the world around you, and they are enervating you in the process. So, for example, if many speakers, including Tucker Carlson and others, get on stage here at TPUSA and claim, without proper evidence, that Jeffrey Epstein was running a Mossad rape ring being covered up by the Trump administration, they are not actually uncovering a conspiracy or effectuating a solution. They are claiming a special provenance to information they won't let you see, which builds their power and leaves you with none. They are also implicating in their speculation actual human beings, good human beings, like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi, and yes, the President of the United States, even if they're too cowardly to say President Trump's name. And that means you won't trust those good people in the future. You haven't gotten smarter, you've just been manipulated. When forced to demonstrate their evidence, these same people will often refuse to provide it. They'll claim ignorance. They'll pretend they're outside the system. And they don't have access to actual information. They're just asking questions. But many of these same people have direct pipelines to informational sources. So, for example, if Tucker wants answers to his questions about, say, Jeffrey Epstein, he could call the Vice President of the United States. He's quite close with him. But he won't, because that might undermine the empty speculation. None of this means there aren't actual real conspiracies in the world. Of course there are. But actual conspiracies require actual evidence. Yes, there was a Russiagate conspiracy, and we know the names of the people involved and what they did. We know Hillary Clinton and Fusion GPS and James Comey and Loretta Lynch and Adam Schiff. We know all of those people. Yes, there was a COVID-19 conspiracy. We know that Anthony Fauci worked to shut down alternative solutions from people like Jay Bhattacharya. But when people posit a conspiracy and then provide you no evidence, they are doing you a fundamental disservice, and they are making you stupider in the process.
Yes. Amen. 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 I'm glad he said it. He said a lot of stuff. The other day at the Heritage Foundation, he also said a nation without borders is no nation, and an intellectual movement without borders is no intellectual movement. That the Heritage Foundation has done a poor job lately of policing who should be in the movement, and he's right. And we have been ceding ground to a bunch of people who have embraced critical theory on the right. It's all a bunch of white nationalists. The white guys are the victims now. And by the way, there's a lot of evidence from DEI that white young men have been discriminated against. And those of you who are listening, who are in charge of corporations, should be mindful of what you're festering out there. But at the same time, you probably are not a victim. And that's my frustration, like with my client. He was not a victim. He concocted a conspiracy theory to avoid blame. And there are a lot of people out there who want you to believe you are a victim because if they convince you you're a victim, they have power over you. They become your oppressor. One of the things that the right has done very well historically is give you individual agency. You're not in a collective. You're not in a class. You're not in a group. And note the number of people today on the right, progressives on the right, who want you to be in a class. They want you to be a white person. The heritage American stuff. Y'all, my mom is in the DAR. We can trace our lineage back before the American Revolution. I guess technically on my mother's side, I'm a heritage American. I'm just an American. It's funny to watch people who have for years blasted African American, Hispanic American, Asian American suddenly say, I'm a heritage American. You're an American. I'm an American. We are a country based on a creed, but we are also a country based on descendants of those who came before us. But we are not accountable for the sins of our fathers in this country. Nor should we use our fathers to claim some special privilege and right of being an American against a newcomer who has assimilated into this country and embraced our values. Otherwise, you are responsible for the actions of your grandfathers and great-grandfathers, and that's the claim the left has wanted to make, and people on the right have embraced it and said, yeah, we're better Americans because we've been here longer. Then what about slavery? Oh, no, don't accuse us of this. But wait, if you're going to base yourself on your great-great-great-great-grandfather, you got to own his sin too. Or you can just be an individual American. I don't know what has infected parts of the right. I think they want to be victims. They've won. You got the House, you got the Senate, you got the Supreme Court, you got the White House, you got the majority of states, and yet still I'm a victim. No, you're not. There are real victims in the world, and your decision to cry and whine and complain that the world is out to get you doesn't mean you're a victim. It means you failed to grasp the consequences of your own actions, and you are essentially degrading real victims. You know who real victims are? The people who got killed and shot on the beach at Bondi Beach. The kids who got shot in the classroom at Brown. Those are real victims. The people who have actually been discriminated against. You just think life is unfair and have decided it means the man is out to get you. It's not the man. Don't be a racist. So while I'm telling stories, welcome back, by the way. Don't forget to text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. You can get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, everything. I'm going to take a few days off, but I'll still be generating a lot of content for you. So follow me on social media, if nothing else. My very first indigent criminal defendant was that guy. And since it's Christmas time, I should tell you my last client. My last client was a woman. See if I can do this without crying, y'all. My last client was a woman who was thoroughly addicted to alcohol and drugs. She had been married and had kids. She had stolen from her children. She had stolen from her husband. She had stolen from her parents. She had stolen from her family. They were exasperated and threw her out onto the streets. She had prostituted herself, and she got arrested for possession of drugs and prostitution, and she could afford no one. And I remember going in, she didn't smell right. There was something wrong with her. She had yellow skin, and it was awful. And she was the kindest person. And she knew she had messed up terribly. And she was willing to go to jail, to prison, and thought that might be the only place left to keep her safe. And so we pled guilty, and they agreed they could keep her at a local institution near her family. The judge was very sympathetic to the plight. The woman broke down in court. explaining she can't get over the addiction, and prison is probably the safest place for her. And they kept her near the family. Her ex-husband was there. Her children was there. Her family was there. Everybody was crying. And so we did it. I had left my law practice. I was taking a job in Washington, D.C., commuting back and forth from Middle Georgia every week. My wife and I, we were preparing to move to Washington. We wound up not doing it. The job just, it wasn't going to work out, and I could see it. And I actually told the CEO of the company, he's like, this isn't going to work. You need to get rid of me. And he gave me 6 months to find a new job. But in the process of doing that, I got a call from, again, Judge Christian. And she said, we need you to come represent a client. I said, I'm not practicing law anymore. She said, are you inactive? I said, not yet. I'm working on it. She says, we need you to come back for your client, the woman, the drug addict. You know, I can't remember her name now. Martha. Christian was the judge, but I think her name was Martha too. I said, what's the matter? She says, your client is dying. Cirrhosis of the liver. She's got not long to live. She needs a lawyer, and you're the only lawyer who ever took her seriously. And we need you to come back. So I took a week off. See, this story wrecks me every time. I took a week off from work. Explained the situation to my boss, former congressman from Oklahoma, Glenn English, wonderful human being. Took a week off from work in D.C., stayed home, got together with the district attorney. Even the local warden was like, look, I mean, we got to do something. She's going to die. There's no reason to leave her in jail. Christmas is coming. Whew, wow, hits me every time. So me, I was always a terrible indigent lawyer. Yeah, I never represented an innocent person. They were all guilty, and my job was to convince them that they should take the plea. Never had to go to trial. They always took the plea. I don't know they wanted me representing them, but they were all guilty, and they all knew it. This lady knew she was guilty. She only wanted me. So we got her out of prison. The DA cooperated. The judge was the one pushing it. Judge Christian had a heart of gold. She was fiery and mean, but she had a heart of gold. So we got this woman out of prison, and her ex-husband let her move in with him, set up a guest bedroom for her. She died on Christmas Eve, 2005. Died on Christmas Eve. Thoroughly addicted, and it destroyed her body. But at least she was home with family. All right, I've cleared myself up. That story wrecks me every time. It does. I don't know what I did to deserve a client who just wanted me to represent, because I was not I was a really good transactional lawyer. I am great at writing letters. I didn't like, I always wanted to be in the courtroom, but I wound up getting in the courtroom. I was like, I don't like this. I like to be behind the keyboard writing. I'm a great writer. And so I would do discovery. I was excellent at doing discovery. Discovery is where you get to ask all the questions and do the depositions. I was great at depositions. I was great at discovery. Just didn't like to be in the courtroom. And here I was with this client dying who needed out of jail, and I was the only lawyer that she wanted. I went inactive after that. I can't give you legal advice. I pay for the privilege of being an active lawyer. I worked so hard to get my law license, passed the bar on the first time, no less, that I don't, anyway. So I let me just say something else here. Let me go back, and I'm not talking about the president's tweet or social media post, True Social post, whatever it is. I want to talk about Rob and Michelle Reiner and their son, Nick. I don't mean this to be mean, but I have friends who have been touched by addiction, family and friends. And I've seen a number of people, particularly on the right, and I think to some degree by way of trying to be dismissive of the president's tweet or deflect from it, saying, oh, they must have been bad parents. What did they do to cause their kid to do this? I've seen it. I've gotten some emails from a couple of people, some of whom I know well and respect, and they were putting Rob Reiner and his wife down for that. Let me tell you the profile of these people. And by the way, I've never met Rob or Michelle Reiner. I have a friend of mine who is very good friends with them, who will go nameless. I know a few other people who've interacted with them loosely. By all accounts, this was a family that loved each other. In fact, their daughter wound up living across the street from them. From what I've read in the media, and several people have told me they had family night all the time. The Reiners would rather sit around inside together as a family and watch TV, yell at sports, and yell about Trump. I mean, they're all big libs, but they loved each other. Nick Reiner, by all accounts, lived on the streets for a time, was homeless for a time. His parents kept urging him to go to rehab, putting him in rehab. They ultimately let him live in a guest house. They wanted him close, hoping they could keep him out of trouble. He, by then, had mental issues as well. And they let him stay in the guest house of their house, so he had a little bit of independence, but was also close to them because they loved their son. And it was in that guest house that press reports say he murdered them. I don't know that I understand the reaction of people that, well, it must have been the parents' fault. I mean, look at them. You didn't walk in their shoes. How are you to judge this? I have a really good friend whose son had to go through rehab. They didn't even know. It started at school with friends drinking. Started at school, went to parties, moved into pills. They had no idea. They had no idea until clearly something was wrong. Had to put their son in rehab. It wasn't their fault. And I'm a little bit put off by the people I've seen who said, it's clearly something's wrong with the family. Clearly something's wrong. Here's why I think it is. It's because Rob and Michelle Reiner are extremely left-wing progressives. And because they're progressives, you have a stereotype of progressives, and it's easy to dislike them. Laura Ingraham said the other day that, she saw Rob Reiner in a restaurant. He recognized her. She spoke to him, and they had a very fun conversation. She had him on her show the next night. Did not hesitate to come on her show. Even they agreed to disagree on everything. She said he was just a wonderful human being. And I've heard this story over and over and over from a number of people on the right who had encountered Rob Reiner. And he was a progressive. He wore it on his sleeve, and he could say terrible things. When Rush Limbaugh died, who is a dear friend of mine, Rob Reiner essentially danced on his grave. That doesn't mean you should dance on his grave. When Charlie Kirk died, he had clearly had a change of heart about how he handled this stuff and was very horrified by it. But this walking in other people's shoes. There's a movement on the right. So Joe Rigney, who I know, has written a book about empathy and how we overplay empathy. And his point is really we should talk about sympathy, not empathy. I actually think we should talk about empathy. You should at least be willing to recognize what other people go through. Now, the problem is that on the left, people think if you recognize what other people are going through, you must accept it. And I disagree completely. And that, I think, is Joe's point by and large. His book on empathy is actually very good, but we should be able to sympathize with people. But this radical empathy that because we recognize what they're going through, we must accept it. No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. I recognize that someone who decides to be transgender is going through something terrible. I can be empathetic to their plight or sympathetic to their plight, but I still think it's wrong. And the problem on the left is that They think when I recognize this person's going through mental distress, therefore we should allow them to surgically alter their body in ways to conform to their mind. If you empathize with them, you got to let them do it. No, I think that's wrong. And I think that's where society is messed up, where when we empathize with people, we cross over. But there's also some people, their pushback to this is, I'm not going to recognize what other people are going through. Or if I haven't lived it, I can't relate to it. A lot of people get accused of being narrow-minded just because for example, me, I get beat up all the time, even by people in radio for being openly about evangelical Christian and my views on biblical sexuality and marriage and things like that. I've had people not put me on their stations. I've had people who refuse to deal with me because of my views as a Christian. I just don't think we should treat each other that way. I just don't. And I'm just flummoxed by people who will look at this Reiner situation and say, well, the parents brought it on themselves. Yes, because they loved their son so much, they held him close. That's why they died. They held him close. What we know is they went to a party at Conan O'Brien's house the night before, or that night, and Nick, their son, was with them and started acting very strange and asking weird questions and made people uncomfortable. And so they left the party. One of the suggestions, I think, in the Wall Street Journal story is that it might have been asked to leave because Nick was creeping people out. And when they got him home, that's when he murdered them, stabbed them to death. They tried to socialize their son. They love their son. They love their family. So I'm going to the Wynn in Las Vegas tonight. When I'm done here, I'm going to go take the family to doctor's appointment. They've all got the flu, and then I moved my flight to later so I could take care of my family first. They all told me go, but I need to get them to the doctor first, just for my own peace of mind. And I'm going to the Wynn in Las Vegas. There's a picture of the whole family of the Reiner family at the Wynn from a few months ago. And it's one of my favorite restaurants. It's a great Chinese restaurant called Wing Li. And they're all sitting there smiling other than Nick, who looks miserable. There was clearly something wrong with him. But his family loved him. And count your blessings if you have never had to deal with addiction, you've never had to deal with mental health issues in your family. Count your blessings, but don't judge other people who deal with those things. Sometimes it is the parents. Listen, when you see a family, in all honesty, and I don't mean to offend anyone on the other side of this one, when you see a family where all the kids have come out as trans, and I've seen this lately, particularly in some of these Hollywood families, there's something wrong with it. And oftentimes you hear about how moms in particular have pressured their kids because they have issues with men and they have a son, so they pressure their son to transition, screwing up their kids. Yeah, parents can screw up kids. There's that Noah Kahan, or however you pronounce his name, song, I'm still angry at my parents' for how they treated them and how they treated me, something like that. And wow, that line, I'm blaming my grandparents for how they treated my parents because of how my parents treated me. There's psychological, multi-generational trauma in some families, and some people can't get over it, and some should have counseling. All I'm just asking, particularly at the Christmas season now, is there are a lot of people going through stuff. And there are a lot of people who want to blame everyone else instead of accepting that they brought it on themselves. But be a little charitable to people. You don't know what they're going through. And be a little compassionate to parents who aren't casting out their child. It wasn't their fault that this happened. And parent, if you're listening to me right now and your kid is going through something, I don't know whether it was you or not, but oftentimes parents will blame themselves for things that are not their fault. And at some point, your child has to take responsibility for himself. You have to allow your child to take responsibility for themselves. Sometimes you got to let them go. My very last client, her family, her children, her husband, her parents, her siblings, they let her go to prison. But they brought her back home and let her die with them in peace out of jail because the love never went away. All I'm saying is, before you blame, think a little more deeply about the situation and try to love your neighbor. I really do think, that there are a lot of people now these days, Christians, self-described Christians, who don't like this whole love your neighbor thing, and they want to qualify. Well, they don't love me, so I don't have to love them. Nope, Jesus never said that. I have read the Greek. There are no carve-outs, exceptions, caveats, anything. It is love your neighbor. Love God and love your neighbor. Doesn't say that the neighbor's going to love you back. It says love your neighbor. It says do to others as you would have them do to you. Even if they don't do to you, you still do to them what you would have them do to you. You show your love. You show your love. And that love and compassion resonates, maybe not with that person, but it will with other people. And we'll all make the world a little better. I'm not going to sling partisan animosity to someone who I know wouldn't like me at all. He was a partisan progressive activist, but he did not deserve to be murdered by the son he loved and tried to help. It ended in tragedy, and we make it more tragic by failing to understand that parents love their children and do what they can to help, and oftentimes these situations aren't the fault of the parents. Conversationalists, some housekeeping for you real quick. I am going to step away for a couple of days. I will be back for Christmas Eve. I do my own Christmas Eve show. I don't like to have guest hosts try to give up their Christmas Eve. There won't be calls because I give everybody off, and I don't want to do that. But I am going to take my family now to the doctor just to make sure they're progressing. They all got the flu. I don't. I'm on Tamiflu to keep me from getting the flu. I will be fine. But I want to say to you, I'm going to be away from the microphone back and forth over the Christmas holidays. And if you want to keep in touch, text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. Get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, the 4 things to know. Be churning out content. I've also got some guest writers lined up over the holidays. Several governors and senators and others will be sending stuff out to my newsletter. If you text Eric to 33777, the very first link will be to that newsletter. You should subscribe. And I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas. I couldn't do a show without an audience, and you guys have been a great audience. One of my frustrations with so much of the stuff lately online, the Erica Kirk, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson stuff, is it's so much online drama by people who live online or defined by being online. It's like the Heritage American stuff. You probably haven't even heard that phrase. But online, you hear it everywhere because it's a bunch of people who used to have these things called clout scores, and you don't know what that is. But if you're on Twitter, you do. And they need new ways to be famous. And it's all these internet famous people. And here you and I are. We live in the real world. And I just, Brent Bozell, who, congratulations to my longtime friend Brent Bozell, who's now the ambassador to South Africa. When I was young and getting involved in politics and running Red State, he told me one time, never, ever, ever, ever move to Washington, D.C. The best advice he gave me, best advice I think I've gotten in my career was not to move there. And it has hurt me to a degree. I think I could be probably bigger in radio by now if I was in New York or D.C. It's been much more slow growth, but the growth is coming. Wait till I get back and you hear about all the new stations. In fact, for Christmas, they're putting me on in Philadelphia for my Christmas show, just for Christmas. But I got more stations coming. I'm excited about the growth, but I couldn't do it without you. I really genuinely could not do a program without listeners. And the thing that I love about you guys, we've done a lot of research, and it's been consistent through my entire career, even going back to Red State before I was on radio. The people who tend to read me and listen to me on the radio are normal people who live normal lives in normal America, who are not obsessive internet trolls, who are not on social media, hanging on the tweets of people. You have families, you have jobs, you're in churches, you're involved in your community, and you just want to know what's going on in the world. And that is my job. I want to keep you entertained. I want to keep you company. I'm your friend on the radio. And as any of you who have met me in person, I was Wayne. Wayne, you know who you are, Wayne. You saw me at In-Town Golf the other day, and I was sitting at the counter having a beer and a burger, and you came up and we chatted. You wanted your picture. And he said, you really are exactly what you are on the radio. And I am. I no pretense about it. I'm not playing a character. So if you meet me in person, I am fat, middle-aged white guy. Although I'm losing weight, I'm getting back in shape. I got to 350 in my deadlift the other day. I can't let my wife beat me in the deadlift. All of this is to say, I am so blessed to have you. You are my Christmas present. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your prayers for my wife and family, for your notes, for your hate listens. Some of you know who you are, for your internet and radio friendship. And I thank all the stations that put me on and have taken a chance on me. You're such a blessing. I'm going to go hit golf balls now after I take my family to the doctor. I'm going to go hit some golf balls for the next 2 days very badly. But I'm going to hit them and enjoy them and smoke some cigars, and I'll be back next week. You guys have a great, great weekend. A very Merry Christmas.